Note-taking is pretty much an essential skill regardless of what you do, whether it's notes for school or for work, or just for little tidbits that you come across that you want to capture somewhere safe, and we can use our journals to do this. I'm Jess, or Jashikarin, on behalf of the Art and Olive Ambassador team, and recently I've been getting really into personal knowledge management, and a big component of this is note-taking. When it comes to handwritten notes though, I don't actually like handwriting all that much, so I want to make it nice and easy for myself. Often I won't decorate the page very heavily, I'll really just use a black pen and a notebook and get into capturing those ideas. When it comes to taking down my notes, I use pretty much the same format each time, so I know exactly how to get started. And the first thing that I'll write down is the title of the piece of media that I'm consuming that I want to take notes on. Typically this will be a book or a video, maybe a podcast, or even just an article, but I want to start by capturing where I got these ideas from, where these notes are actually taken from. If you're taking notes digitally, it can be then very easy to save where that thing is based on like a link, URL, or even taking a photo of something and putting that into there. And I do have a solution for that, but we're going to get back to it in a second. After the title, then what I'll usually put in is the source and the author of that piece of content. For me, source is like what type of media is it? So is it a YouTube video, podcast, etc.? And the author is whoever has produced that or put that out. When it comes to using my notes in the future, I really just want to be able to scan my eyes over the page really quickly and take away the main points. That's why the section I'll typically put after this first information is just a main takeaway section. I won't fill these at the start because often I haven't consumed the piece of media in full yet, but once I've completely taken down the rest of my notes, I'll come back and fill that in. I also find that only giving myself a smaller amount of space for these main takeaways means that I really have to condense or distill the information into very bite-sized pieces. It means that for future me, when I come back to use these notes, they're going to be a lot more user-friendly than having to read over the entire page, or sometimes even multiple pages, just depending on how many notes I've taken. After those four first pieces, so the title, the source, the author, and the main takeaways, this is where things can kind of change up in terms of their ordering. For instance, if in the piece of media, say it's a YouTube video, they've told me at the start what they're going to be talking about in general terms, sometimes I'll just put in a list of the key points from the video. Then I can elaborate those when I go to take my notes. The notes section that I'm writing here is often written with bullet points. I like to use a very small open circle for the note, kind of to differentiate it between a task versus a note. If you're using a traditional bullet journaling key, then maybe you want to do this as a little dash, but I prefer the little circle. As I go through, I'm just taking down small thoughts from the piece of media I'm consuming, trying to make sure that I'm wording this in the best way possible. I don't want it to be too long, because I don't want to spend all of my day writing, but I need there to be enough context so that when I come back to this in the future, I know what I was talking about. Finding that balance can be a little bit tricky, and it does take a little bit of practice, but I'm really just trying to balance efficiency with capturing enough information. What you might like to do as you take down your notes is do a little bit of highlighting. In this case, I do recommend making sure that you're either starting with a pen that is water fast, so not the pen I am using here, thus I don't do any highlighting, or what you can do is put your highlighter down first and then write over the top of it. That one can have a little bit of difficulties in trying to predict how much text you need to highlight and put that color down first, so it can usually be better just to make sure that you're using a waterproof pen. Do make sure that when you're doing this highlighting though, you don't over highlight. If you highlight everything, then it's not usually going to help you pull out those key ideas. Talking about key ideas, another section that I'll often have when taking my notes is a space for ideas. Oftentimes when I'm consuming a piece of media, book, video, whatever else, I'll start to have thoughts pop up about how I'll actually be able to use that information. And I want to capture that in the moment because often that is a fleeting thought and it will be gone very soon. When it comes to capturing the ideas, I like to change up the type of bullet, either by doing it as a dot for a task, or a little box like I'm doing here. That way I can fill it in once I've actually actioned that idea. As you can see, I've put the ideas space on the next page over. This is because often I will like to write down notes and ideas at the same time, and I don't want them to get in the way of each other. Rather than trying to predict how much space I'm going to need for notes and then how much space I'm going to need for ideas, I'll just write them in two separate places, kind of like I'm doing here. Another type of section that could be useful is an actions list. So this is effectively a list of tasks that you want to do to actually act on the information that you've consumed. When it comes to an actions list, I like to do this with the regular task bullet, so just a dot, and I can cross that off once I've started and then completed that task. Without an actions list section, I find that a lot of the time the information that I'm, consuming and then generating ideas from just kind of gets left at that idea generation stage. I don't often actually take action and do something with that information. If you're intentional about writing out what those actions are at the moment of consuming the piece of media, you're more likely to actually take action on the stuff that you've thought about. Of course, I'm talking about this very much in terms of it being a piece of media, but like we said before, note-taking doesn't just have to be for consuming content, it can be for going to lessons or lectures. It could be a course that you're taking online. Technically speaking, I suppose we could consider that as media as well, but just know that the tips that we're talking about here, they do have wider applications than just watching YouTube videos. Like we said before though, one of the benefits of a digital note-taking system is the ability to save URLs. And while you can write them down in your notebook, oftentimes actually using that URL or that website address is a little bit difficult because you have to then go type it out again when you want to go put it into your browser. What I've found works really well instead is setting up QR codes. You can find a bunch of QR code generators online for free. You just have to copy and paste the URL of the piece of media into that generator and it'll spit out a QR code that you can then stick into your notebook. You can either just print that on regular cartridge paper and then cut it out and paste it in, or you could print it on maybe a mini thermal printer and then it's already on sticker paper, stick that in instead. The nice part about this though is that when you want to refer back to that piece of media, you don't have to type in the long URL address. All you have to do is whip out your phone, scan that QR code, and it'll take you right to the source. When it comes to taking notes, a lot of what we've done here is really just list writing, and that is one way that you can take notes, but because you're working on paper, you have a lot of flexibility. Other things that you can do could be draw pictures. For instance, in this case, I was consuming a piece of media about layout ideas, so maybe I'd want to go in and draw out some little thumbnails of what those ideas look like. And another way to take your notes is through mind mapping. This is a really good way to link ideas together, kind of branch your thoughts out from a central topic. And that one's very much about making connections between different pieces of the media you're consuming, or your different ideas that you're generating from having consumed it. It very much depends on what I'm consuming or what I'm taking notes on as to which style I use, but my default often is just list writing because it is super simple. Once your notes are written up, do make sure to add them into some kind of index so that you can find them again later, mainly so that you can come back and actually take action on all of those ideas that you just generated. These are just some ideas for how you can take notes in your journal, and if you wanted even more, then jump over to the Outro and Olive blog post related to this video. That one's linked in the description box. Or if you were on the hunt for more journal ideas in general, then one of these videos is the next one to check out. Click or tap on either of those, and thanks for watching.